Welcome back to the Nathan Jun Show. It is Tuesday, November 25th, and thank you so much to everybody who has listened to my first episode, which was my first go. I thought that it was awful, but apparently everybody likes it. So far, I've got some really great reviews. Please do give me a review on whatever streaming platform you are listening to and give me a like and a subscribe. I would really, really appreciate it. Getting on to kind of some things that are top of mind for me right now, outside of the political space, something that is top of mind is I was at dinner last week with a couple of my friends, and one of them was pregnant, another one doesn't drink. One of them, me, actually does drink a heavy amount. And we got to the end of the night and we had done everything a la carte style and we had shared all of the food. We hit this point where I ended up paying for the bill just to make it easy for everybody. I have the receipt. I was trying to figure out how to go through it and split everything up for the person that was pregnant who didn't get a drink, for the person who just wasn't drinking. Why is this so hard? And it was almost embarrassing for me as somebody who specializes in data and statistics. And I basically started college already finishing all of my college math classes because I was doing dual enrollment in high school. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I cannot for the life of me figure out how to do this. So somebody's going to make $1 trillion to just figure out an app for people who go out to dinner and do not drink. I digress. So earlier this morning, I actually had the opportunity to be a guest on the I've Had It podcast show, I've Had It News with Jennifer Welch. I started off the show by basically saying, girl, you have no idea how big of a deal this is for me, because I actually was front row when Jennifer and Angie did their tour last year during New York Comedy Festival. And I was front row. That's how big of a fan I am. So this is such a full circle moment for me. They actually said in their podcast that one of their priorities is to lift up voices who are up and comers, not just feature the biggest names in the world, and even specifically to lift up voices in the LGBTQIA plus community. That means so much. When these women say that they are, patriots and gaytriots, they really, really do mean it, because granted, I have like 800 and something thousand followers on social media platforms, but I'm not like one of the biggest voices out there. So the fact that they reached out to me and asked me to be a guest on there, I'm so appreciative of it. So I am going to start formatting these podcasts in different areas, which are things that I am paying attention to, things that I am reading, education, and then also hot topics in this space. So starting it off with one of the biggest hot topics right now, Trump has been going on a Truth Social posting spree. And I don't recommend to you to follow Trump on Truth Social. I do myself. I also have a bunch of MAGA social media accounts because I allow my algorithms on those social media accounts to be flooded with whatever MAGA is talking about, because it's very informative and it's very, very important for me to understand what the other half of the country believes, because I can't do my job effectively to try and educate unless I actually understand what the counter argument is. Because I firmly believe that the work that I am doing will probably not convince somebody who is MAGA or who is conservative to ever actually buy into it, just because they're going to see me, a BIPOC immigrant, homosexual, and they're going to be like, I'm not going to listen to this person. Clearly, this person has a agenda. But if I can better equip you as the viewer and listener to have these difficult conversations with your neighbors and with your family, we can start chipping away at some of these red blocks. We're not going to probably turn them to be blue, but if we can just get a couple thousand votes, in some of these strongholds, it is enough to eventually flip this country back to sanity. So again, and a lot of people ask me, I don't understand how you can possibly spend so much time on the MAGA side of social media without losing your mind. It is emotionally taxing, if I'm being completely honest. But what I always say is I remove myself from the reality of it, and I liken myself to almost being Jane Goodall studying chimpanzees in the wild. And that is and is not meant to be an insult. It's basically just me saying, I'm just studying how people react to things and what they believe and how they function, because it helps me actually be able to be a very much more effective communicator. So, getting into hot topics right now. As I said before, Trump is on Truth Social posting nonstop. He's posted a couple AI photos of himself. He's even posting screen grabs of tweets right now that are coming actually from the accounts where we now have realized are originating in Nigeria, Russia, Israel, Ethiopia. Just the fact that he's posting these screen grabs is so wild for the president of the United States to be posting propaganda that originates from another country. That's the current landscape in terms of media literacy that we are in right now. So, one of the things that is coming up, though, is this attack on people like Senator Mark Kelly and Senator Alyssa Slotkin. And basically, he is saying that their involvement in attempting to keep our military checked and balanced, which, by the way, is the function of our legislative system, is that they are meant to keep the president checked and balanced, and they are meant to keep other entities checked and balanced. That is the whole purpose of having a democracy based off of a constitutional republic, or a constitutional republic based off of democracy. Apples and oranges, either or. I cannot get into more debates with MAGA about we are not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic. We are both. But for him to basically get his entire base all riled up about something that is not actually a thing, because he is basically saying, I am angry about the fact that the purpose of the legislative branch's pure existence is prohibiting me from being able to implement my oligarchy and implement the fact that I am a dictator. That is actually what is happening. And the problem is that his base just eats it up. So if you ever get into conversations with a MAGA family member or friend and they talk about sedition and keeping our legislative branch in check, you need to tell them, no, the purpose of the legislative branch is to keep the president actually in check. Also, going after Mark Kelly, who is a literal fighter jet pilot, went to space, like, and the most that you have done in your career, Donald Trump, in terms of this context is driving a golf cart to the buffet line. Like, you need to sit down, because there are people who you can go after much easier in Congress and in our Senate right now. Going after Mark Kelly, who's an actual veteran who fought in literal jets and went to space, and whose wife, Gabby Giffords, was shot based off of political violence, that is not a fight that is going to work out in the long run for you. So, moving on to part two. Every so often, I will get a comment in my social media that is something along the lines of, impeach now. We need to impeach. We need to remove the president from office. I am not convinced 100% of this, but I am starting to believe that a lot of Americans don't actually understand what the impeachment process is. So, impeachment is effectively, we are going to charge you with crime against America. That's the best that I can kind of call it, meaning like something you are doing is very, very wrong, and the House calls for articles of impeachment. And they basically say, we no longer have our faith in you, President Trump, so we are going to vote to charge you with consideration for removal from office. So that's what an impeachment is. And it just requires a simple majority. Somebody has to draft articles of impeachment. Somebody eventually, probably Speaker Mike Johnson, has to allow that vote to go to the floor, which is a problem right now. And then they vote. Now, if that passes, what happens is a Senate trial, and that is presided over by lead Justice Roberts, and he will basically preside over a trial with effectively the Senate being the jury in that process. Now, here is where it gets really, really tricky. Impeachment is charging. Removal from office is the ruling from the jury, aka the Senate. It requires 67 of 100 senators to actually approve it. This is why in the past there have been impeachments, but it has not gotten through the Senate. So when you scream, impeach now, it's basically a figurehead. It's basically like a faux thing because nothing happens unless the Senate, in a 2/3 vote, actually votes to remove the president from office. So it's not saying that we shouldn't be calling for impeachment. I just think that there is a fundamental lack of understanding of what it actually means to impeach somebody, because it's just basically charging him with, executive branch crimes and, just any injustices that he is doing, anything that is corrupt. Corruption is a really, really good way to impeach somebody. I mean, of course, we know Bill Clinton was impeached because he lied about getting a blowjob from Monica Lewinsky. It didn't lead to him being removed from office, but he was impeached. So just keep that in mind as you're having these discussions, that impeachment is really not like the biggest step. The actual biggest step is the Senate actually voting to remove somebody from office. So something that is happening right now on social media, and it's actually been happening for a long time that I have observed, and every so often it shows up in my For You page, is this attack on Aaron Parnas. If you don't know Aaron Parnas, he is the We Have Breaking News guy. I know Aaron Parnas. Everything that I have interacted with him is he's a really, really great guy. He is very stressed out all the time, but I think if you were making your career around constantly having to break news, and unfortunately we have a lot of news to break all the time, I would be stressed out as well. But there is this discourse happening right now, which is that Aaron Parnas is killing journalism. I have a lot of thoughts on this. I'm not a journalist, so I don't have the POV of a journalist, but I do have thoughts on all of these videos that are becoming very, very viral. Like some of these videos are getting, in the millions of views. And let's watch the first one now, or listen to the first one now to
We
start
have some
off.
very serious news right now. Aaron Parnas is killing journalism. Never heard of him? Parnas has millions of social media followers and over 635,000 Substack subscribers. Tens of thousands of those subscribers pay him to summarize the work of actual journalists without giving them any credit.
So this person is basically saying that Aaron Parnas is what I would call an aggregator, in that Aaron Parnas takes news and then he basically distributes it. And sometimes that news is breaking from the press wire. Sometimes that news is breaking from the AP or another news source. A lot of times the news is actually breaking from Donald Trump's social media accounts himself. But I'm going to get to it a little bit later of what my summary is. I am going to just go ahead and play another video. Just give me a second here. I'm still trying to figure out the technicality aspects of this.
Breaking. We've got some news coming in from publicly available sources that you could have just Googled, that Aaron Parnas, the influencer who is now like Substack's darling with a $25,000 prize and is sharing news for Gen Z on TikTok, has always been a grifter and is not a real journalist.
So the thing about this is, calling him a grifter is that he is selling you something. If Aaron is not trying to sell you a PDF to download that makes you more media literate, is encouraging you to subscribe to his Substack. He is encouraging you to watch his videos across social media platforms, and he very likely does make money off of those video views. I make money off of some of my video views. But this discourse of basically calling him a grifter, I don't necessarily align with. But let's watch this video that's actually coming from a person on the conservative side of social media.
We have some very serious news right now.
Hey, liberal fruitcakes! Breaking news! Aaron Parnas just likes reading the news. Let's talk about it!
Yes.
Now, this is an opinion, but what Aaron does is not journalism. It doesn't even feel like commentating. It feels like regurgitating. It feels like regurgitating information from an article you read without adding your own opinion about it. But hey, he got 4 million followers for it.
So here's my POV on that. We're going to first talk about the media landscape right now. So if you don't know this, approximately 1 in 5 Americans are currently getting their news from social media and from social media creators. I was at the Pew Research Summit about a month ago, and this was one of the talking points, which was basically Americans now no longer trust mainstream media, and they are starting to trust independent creators. That is the current landscape. Let's talk a little bit about algorithms. Algorithms are trained to create confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is basically, I so badly want something to be true that if somebody substantiates that for me, I'm going to automatically believe it. There are a lot of creators in this space who are simply posting things to just get an emotional reaction from you. I would say a lot of the creators in this space do that as their main means to try and get views and to grow their audiences. And eventually, nobody is in this space, to be clear. Nobody is in this space unless they hope that it will come with monetary gain in some capacity, whether that is a podcast or whether that is getting sponsorships for that podcast. It could be a book deal. It could be a guest spot on MSNBC. Everybody in this space is doing it because we enjoy the dopamine rush and the endorphins from actually getting likes, comments, and followers who love us. You cannot actually do this in this space without saying that that is not a driving principle. What I know about Aaron Parnas is that most of his content, actually all of his content, is not opinionated, and it is just an aggregator of the news. But if you look at the media landscape and how things currently are, and that people are actually starting to prefer getting their news from creators rather than mainstream media sites and mainstream media social media pages, he has just tapped into that very, very smartly. And, there's all these narratives that exist with Aaron Parnas. I think one of them is that he's popular and people don't believe that that popularity is justified. I think when people say that all that he does is this simple thing like regurgitating the news, they're just showing vulnerability and a belief that they have intellectual superiority in a specific space, and that they actually do provide the context and the further diagnosis, and that his popularity isn't earned. It's not justified. The reality is that with the current media landscape comes media literacy. People are just so influenced by headlines that they won't read the article. This is a proven fact that most people would rather read the headline than read below maybe the first paragraph. You can go through every major media website and they have these clickbait headlines because that's how they're trying to grab your attention so that they can drive views, because if they drive views, they're going to get more ad revenue from those views. If you say that Aaron Parnas's popularity is not justified, and that you believe that, media literacy is dying and has resulted in people just wanting information, but we're not explaining it, you're basically just fighting a giant wave of reality. I understand why somebody who might be an actual journalist or writer might be upset by his popularity, but it's just not realistic in the current media landscape. And saying that you have intellectual superiority over somebody, what you're basically saying is, I believe that Americans should be smarter than they actually are. And what Aaron Parnas is doing is saying, I accept that where Americans are and how they want to receive information is this. So I am basically going to capitalize on it. And I don't criticize him for that. Number two reason is, again, like I said, they're angry because they believe he is destroying journalism. Let's look at this New York Times article that came out a couple weeks ago that basically said progressive, liberal, feminists are destroying the workplace. The New York Times had to rewrite that headline multiple times, and it created this outrage because even they could not figure out how to say this article that was clearly written to just offer clickbait. That's the state of media, is that the major publications are needing to write forced clickbait that will create emotional outrage. As somebody who has rooted their social media presence in research, data, and analytics, do I wish that Americans had higher media literacy? Do I wish that they understood data and statistics and macroeconomics better? Do I wish that they would stop reading just the headlines? Yes. Do I understand that people's attention spans are just completely zapped and their only method and chosen method of receiving information is in 1 minute increments? Absolutely. But the other thing is that you can't accuse people of not being journalists when journalism as a whole has become a race to the bottom of creating clickbait headlines. When the actual publications themselves are struggling to have readers, they themselves are forcing themselves to lower to this quality level that is just, how can we enrage Americans? Aaron Parnas, all he's doing is basically providing information, and he's neither providing rage or expecting an emotional response. He is just basically reporting on something that happened. Now, the third reason that I think there is all this discourse is jealousy. Just going to say that. He's in the top 1 to 2% of political creators, and most people are just upset that they are not him. The crazy thing about Aaron Parnas, and I talk about this about myself all the time, I don't have a master's degree in economics. I don't have a strong background in public policy. My specialty is data and analytics and being able to craft and create easy to understand communication strategies. That is what I do as a profession in my actual job. Aaron Parnas has a law degree from George Washington, and he used to be an attorney. He actually has educational chops to be able to analyze specific things around our Justice Department, but also he is very, very well educated. And in my opinion, we can't simultaneously scream about the education problem in this country and then try and tear down people who actually are very educated themselves, because he very, very much knows what he's talking about. And he also very, very much is understanding and has a pulse on how people want to be communicated to. You're just jealous about the fact that you didn't think of it first. So, as a summary, we are in a battle right now where misinformation is now being distributed by Russian, Nigerian, Ethiopian, and Israeli bots. That is what is happening right now. They are making conservative, Trump fan, First Lady fan, Pete Hegseth fan, MAGA Trump 2028 pages, and they're acquiring hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers, and they're originating from Ethiopia, Nigeria, Russia, and Israel. That is the current landscape. Also, the GOP currently outspends Democrats in the political media space by almost 4-1. So, in my opinion, Aaron Parnas may not provide the in-depth coverage that purists believe and that journalists believe, and he may not cover every topic that everybody wants him to cover, and some people might even believe that he's withholding covering things for personal reasons. He's allowed to do that as an independent journalist. He is not an entire army of writers at Reuters or at the AP. He is a single person. But also, we cannot accuse politicians of being bought and paid for by corporations and PACs and then accuse independent journalists who are trying to just simply provide more information to the public and discredit their work just because we don't think what he does isn't helpful. Because the reality is, over 5 million people think that he is helpful. So I support Aaron and his work because I believe that an informed voter is a smarter voter. Again, thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope that you're enjoying it. I hope that I'm giving you, things that can spark conversations with you and your neighbors and your family. Everybody, good luck this week. We have Fall Brawl 2025 happening in just 2 days. I am headed down to Tampa, Florida to meet with my family and some of my brother's family, and it is going to be a split MAGA progressive household. I love talking about politics, but I don't know if anybody else does. But yeah, good luck this week if you're entering into a hostile environment, because these important conversations are necessary to have.